It's about who you are as a person and the love quotient that you carry. That's the mission, is to, one individual at a time, change this world and fan the Christ flame, or the universal truth of the isness of what we are, into all of them. That's the number one. But primarily nuclear power. They're watching multiple programs. They're influencing behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say it's about the love potion that you carry?
The love quotient.
Quotient, okay. I both.
I got some love potion here.
All right, we've got Tony Rodriguez of the SSP, and I'm Jackie Pierce, and this is Talks with Tony.
Welcome back, everybody. Jackie and Rob, it's good to see you guys. It already feels like a lot of fun, and we've only been talking for a few minutes here on this. For everybody that, people that might not know, Rob Potter is our guest today. He's does thepromiserevealed.com and has a radio show, a network. He'll go into that later. I know Rob from the very early days. When I first got my recall in 2015, I had reached out and did a little bit of work with Dr. Michael Sala, and he referred Rob to me, and we met because Rob had just moved to Maui, and I was living on Maui at the time. And so we went out to lunch together, and I've known him since, and Rob has been a big help, and really has taught me a lot of things about ufology and what's been going on in there. Basically, he's just plugged into the whole community. So I'm really happy to have you here today, Rob. Hello.
Thank you. It's really fun to be here. It's an honor to be here with you and Jacqueline. And yeah, Tony, you were you're just a regular guy, and you were researching when we met. What's the name of that restaurant there in Makawao?
Oh, the one in Makawao was the Mexican place. What was that called? I forget the name of there was a Mexican one, but we went to the Kula Bistro. The Kula Bistro the first time. And, you know, I was talking to Jackie about this, and she claims to have a complex taste in this, but you were the first person in my life, and a lot of people don't know this, but we sat down to eat, and we made our order, and he said, you know, you get a burger or whatever. He said, what do you want to drink? And I'm like, I'll just have a Coke. And then, Rob, you gave the most complicated, most delicious sounding drink order. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I didn't even know that was on the menu. You said, give me a strawberry lemonade with whipped cream and some chocolate sprinkles. And I went, what? This is an Italian place. How does that? I didn't even know that was real, that you could do that. And the waiter just didn't miss a beat and was like, sure. And then you did it again in Makawao at the Mexican place. You got something else that was like highly complex that I was just envious of your drink. I thought, this guy's got some taste.
Well, I remember there is it's like a sweet and sour martini. Like, let's get on to the good stuff.
I love it. I had to say something though. I had to say that because I think that's you know what, that's insight into your personality, and you're a very, very in-depth person, and you know what I mean. Like you're a very complex person. It's been awesome.
Well, I try to be more simple, but I do have a lot of experience, and I was really happy to hear your story. I listened with an open mind. I sometimes go in with you know, a little judgment, but this was a physical government type situation. So I was, and Michael had referred to you, and he's a brilliant writer. Michael's one of the leading luminaries in the exopolitics movement, or the extraterrestrial field, as far as really bridging the physical nuts and bolts with the more esoteric aspect of the multidimensional nature of the phenomenon of the visitation and of beings from other worlds throughout history, and they've never left. And understanding the game behind the scenes politically with the various confederations and how they work is another level of understanding that I'm gaining now through my associations with Dr. Raymond Keller and some of these Venusians that I've met recently.
Very interesting. So in the very beginning, in those days, in those early talks, I mean, it was still, you know, they were still formative memories for me, and I really had sorted out a lot of it. So just to be able to talk to somebody in the beginning like you that was smart in the field and was serious enough to listen to me, and there were plenty of times. I know that in the very beginning, the first 15 minutes, you had your skeptic, you know what I mean, glasses on to make sure that I wasn't just giving you a bunch of BS. And I expected that, but the more it was more therapeutic for me than anything, just to be able to talk to somebody, in a grown-up way about it. So that was like a big help to me. And it went on to lead to interviews and progress to here we are today. And this show is pretty new. We've had some good responses. The website just launched not too long ago. And I feel like we're making some good progress, you know what I mean, in the tech. My audio was really bad in the first one or first two. And I'll probably never live it down off air. But I think we're doing good. We're making some big progress. I know Jackie is really happy to talk to you today about that, about your particular experiences. The other thing is, I went over to your house and sat in on your radio show one time, and you introduced me to Randy Kramer in the very beginning, the very first introduction. You had him on your show. We were on the phone and we conference called with him. And that was, to me, that was like a big deal. He was far into the community already and pretty well known. And he was really the one that spurred and helped me remember, about the time difference. He was the one that explained the 20 and return technology, how people go for a couple of decades and then go back in time and go back. He was the one that really, his first interviews really explained how that works. So that was like hero stuff for me. I was just a kid in a candy store to sit in on your show.
Well, it's my honor, my pleasure there. Yeah, I think one of the things that, I want to tell the audience is from the questions and the memories, I could see Tony through his process, through the months and actually years now, 5 years that I've known you, that you've gone through the recollection, and you've called me and we've talked at various points when certain memories have become clearer and all this stuff. And actually this is kind of like what Randy Kramer went through. I talked to someone who was a roommate of his, and he would be sitting on the bed and he'd just go, he'd sit there for like hours. He'd just be like entranced in a memory or something. And then he would come out with a certain information. And I think that's a process of this kind of, it's called a tech from the ancient Atlantean Lemurian days. It's a real technology that is 25 million years old. It has nothing to do with Nazis, but there's an advanced technology in the nature of the mind and the soul and how the body incarnates. And the Venusians, and it's done to good purposes too, for beings that are on other worlds and something happens, because they don't cling to life. In the other worlds, it's more harmonious. They're more last enemy to be conquered shall be death, and that's kind of what happens. They have a very long lifespan. They have a technology that makes them long-lived. It's called the Vril technology, and it exposes the cells to certain types of radiation. So this is in my book, and these are some of the questions and answers. But from our discussions there back in Hawaii, I discerned pretty quickly that you were the real deal and that you were sincere and honest. And some of the more disturbing things, I don't know if you've ever talked about them on there, I won't mention them, but in your service and the things you had to go through in the early ages when you were actually targeted in the act of proxy vengeance by the father of some immature kid. I mean, it's just kids, Mm-hmm. And that was a fateful thing that has led you to where you're today, which is, by the way, thank you for being in Mount Shasta. As you can see, I'm with the Venusians up here on the ship called Black Knight. It's 150 miles in an orbit above the Earth there.
That's your background. And I picked Mount Shasta. It was beautiful. I went to the 2016 conference in Mount Shasta, and I had an awesome time there. That was just really eye-opening. Unfortunately, this year I wanted to come out, but we just had the COVID stuff, and this year was kind of 2020. It's hard to plan anything. So I want to get back out there again. Mount Shasta is a very spiritually cleansing place. You can just feel it. Just driving around the area, you can just, it's like a completely different vibe there.
That was my conference with Laura Eisenhower, Michael Sala, yourself. And we, at the end, you were there and you had said something. I said, maybe. And so I said, are you ready? Do you want to, and you said, you nod your head there. And there's a little buzz in there and going in there. And it kind of gave you a little beginning and encouragement to do your public persona, because I do think that it's very important that people understand that the universe isn't as you think, that there's a lot of things that I've been learning that are just, consistently bowling me over, and you just have to remain humble and in excitement for the potential of humanity and the positive things that are coming forward now. But it's going to be a dirty dog shake for a while. But I want to say I would lend my endorsement to you as a genuine person. Now, who knows? There's fake. Maybe we're all being implanted with fake memories. That's probably possible. But I think that there is a reality we have to face in regards to people like you and Randy and others in the Mars Jump Room program, like Andrew Basaggio. That's important. So I'm happy to come on the show and say I think you're doing a great job, and I appreciate you having me on here.
Thanks, Rob. It's been a ride, and I remember that when you gave me a plug, and right at the last day of the Mount Shasta conference, you said, "There's Tony Rodriguez in the back there, and he's got info coming out." And I forget exactly. You didn't talk long, and it was only a few minutes later. I was like swarmed with people asking me questions. I got surrounded by people, and I had to get out of there. I said, "Whoa!" I had to step out because I didn't expect the response to be like that. It was immediate, and people want to know more about this subject. A lot of people have experience, and that's one thing that I've learned by coming forward, is that more people and more people have come forward with feeling the same thing, like that they've been involved in something like this, and everybody has kind of a bit of a hunch about it, and everybody is a big word, but there's a lot of people, a lot more than I ever thought would be like that.
Yeah, there's some people, there's some people are tuning in and resonating. I don't know, each person has to have their own thing, and it doesn't matter, but the question is what, there's so many questions that come from this type of program and the story that you have that challenges apperceptions and beliefs and raises prejudices and programs and triggers that are put in people. And most people are so intensely focused on the 3D that they don't realize the reality that we're all manufacturing through our intention and what we're doing every day. So
that's right. I do want to say that, the technology, like you said, that the life extension technology and how it gets used for good purposes as well. I want to say that it was my experience. So what I remember is that was one of the very first technologies that gets traded for like when they went into, like when the Germans secretly went into space in the turn of the century, right around World War II. And they began to trade for technology. That was one of the first things that was traded to them for whatever they paid, was the 20 years, the increment, that technology, that life extension. So it's common throughout the cosmos. All the spacefaring species, that's one of the first things that they trade and give them, is the ability to do that. And I've spoken on it many times that there's a lot of good things that come out of it, that you can do it. Who wouldn't want to live an extra 20 years? Not only that, who wouldn't want to live an extra 20 years of their prime years? You know what I mean? From 15 to 35, those years, and get it back again and do it again. So who wouldn't want to do that? And that's really what the tech is. But again, I think my account is showing how they've abused it. So some small fraction of the people that are involved that have access have really abused it for their own gain. And you know what? And I've said that, that's just something that mankind has got to grow past, because we're not really ready. When they say you're not ready for certain technologies, people that abused it, they just prove that they weren't ready for that yet. So I think that we're getting to the point where we are, people are starting to get a lot more empathetic. The kids growing up these days are connected with everybody, whereas when I grew up, we weren't really that connected. And so people are learning and being a lot more empathetic across the board. So I do want to let Jackie talk a little bit. So it's been a while.
I know we had to catch up. We didn't talk too much before, Jackie. So
That's okay.
For being so patient.
I want to say this. I want to say one thing is that Jackie is the brains and the brawn behind this show and the website, and she's really carried me and done all the real rubber on the road kind of stuff. And I'm very grateful for her to put me here on this. She's really a genius at this stuff and has been the brains behind it. And I just can't thank her enough. So I am.
It's so
I don't know
kind,
how you
Tony.
feel.
Well, I don't want you to come off as like my sidekick. It's the other way around. I'm actually your sidekick. So
No, that's very lovely. Thank you. As you guys were speaking, I have a whole new page of questions that came up.
Oh, okay.
This is going to be fun. I can already tell. But Rob, I love that you said we could all potentially be implanted with the same sort of scheme going on in our brains, because I say that to Tony all the time. I'm like, we don't really know what's going on. It's possible that it's some kind of implant in some big game. Could you
I
say
think
more
that,
about that?
yeah. So I think there's an aspect that we have to understand, that as a 3D being, there is actually architects of the universe from the higher dimensions that are guiding the wisdom of the higher dimensionals of the third, fourth, and fifth dimension in society. You know, God makes it very simple. We all work in harmony according to certain laws, and you know, we realize the law of one, or the reality that we're all eternally related, and we do unto others as we would have done unto ourselves. And if we can abide by these you know, integrated feelings and thoughts in harmony with the universe, it'd be a better place one at a time. Now, there's a lot of this can get a little complex, but going back into the ancient history of the universe and blah, 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 we can go back to 400,000 years ago. There's been all of these various cycles as these various races have achieved spacefaring capability over billions of years of cycles, and it's tremendously diverse. You can't even imagine the you know, the geology of the planet, its magnetic influences, the type of sun, the type of life, the type of genetics raising this culture, and different things are actually developing along different species lines, so to speak. We have humans with dog heads and all of these, you know, there's horses with human heads or something, you know, in the fifth dimensional world. And A Journey to My Abduction to the Ninth Planet is a very informing book by a guy from France, and who was taken up in 1995. So the normalization of interdimensional reality is important, and to understand the quarantine and the reasons for it is an important aspect for light workers to come to grips with the physical nuts and bolts of what happened.
I
No.
actually wanted to ask you something about the Vril technology, by the way. Is that what you called it, Vril?
Yeah, the Vril, that's what I was going to talk about.
Yeah. I have just an off the bat question, because as far as our conversations, you know, Tony and I in the space program, this technology is cut into 20-year increments for some reason. But if you have experience doing your own, you know, ascension exploration, awareness expansion, it seems like a native technology to our souls in a way. Like our souls have been splicing into timelines for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. On the oversoul level, you have an oversoul that exists in a higher position, dimension, and you have various bodies, and they're actually playing out in all times all at once. It's really trippy. So, I mean, how we like to think of things is one thing. The history of the Vril kind of goes back to this ancient technology. It was the Venusians said thousands of years ago, but the Vril technology is 25 million years old, from what I understand. It was about the time when the beings from Tau Ceti moved to Venus, and they petitioned the native population of Venus, which are bees. The bees are really cool, and the bees. There we go.
You got to hold it in front of your face. There you go.
There we go.
Be happy.
Yeah, there you go. So the bees were actually allowing them to land. The the Tausedians were probably fourth dimensional and were already in harmony with their nature and surroundings, had psychic abilities. And they lived in harmony. And then a group from the Pleiades and Aldebaran system that had developed this genetic splicing material forcibly. This was kind of an intense thing that wasn't, I mean, we think of it as horrible. They would come to planets and take them over and genetically alter them. They said, oh, humans and bees, what a great farm worker race. You guys were like gangsters on a big level. And so they spliced the bees and the humans together. And unfortunately, the human bees had to live inside caves. It was kind of prehistoric Venus at that time with broccoli, 200 feet high. So it was pretty exotic planet. And this is told in Dr. Raymond Keller's third book. It's very complex to go into. It's just be an outer space novel to most people, but it's true. And because all of this stuff is coming together from all the things we've learned through the past, it seems to be coinciding with my knowledge that this is what took place. And so what happened was really like a War of the Worlds type scenario on Venus, because there was an asteroid that hit Venus and kicked up the dust, and the Aldebarans and the Pleiadians started dying in droves because of the bacteria. They weren't able to survive, so they left, and they left their what's called drill technology. And I'm not going to go into that. That's in Dr. Raymond Keller's excellent adventure. You can read about that, and some of the other books too. But the way they got it back was very they got to use the technology because they had been spliced, they could not access the technology. So they had an infusion of an outside DNA that was able to access the technology, and they utilized it to basically normalize their DNA. So the bee line went back to more bees, and the humans went back to more humans over time. And there still are hybrids, and they enjoy a unique culture because of that blending. Even though it was something bad, the universe made something good. So they call that the Syrian shift.
Okay, I gotta ground this for 1 second. So what you're saying is there are currently bee-like creature beings, human-like beings, and hybrids on Venus as we speak.
And many other different races, yeah. So the point is not to show you the outside, but to expand people's thoughts and ideas of what they think is real, and understanding what we think we know about life and genetics and how to get along. It's not about silver spaceships or silver spacesuits, Jacqueline, or the technology. It's about raising our consciousness to a vibrational level where this technology can meet maturity. And that's been the age-old problem here.
I want to pick your brain about I want to go into that a little bit more. But I also want to acknowledge people who might be hearing this for the first time. And it's like, it is a vibrational work that a lot of us are doing here. But if you can't even get past the cognitive dissonance of like, wait, there's life on Venus, why wouldn't we know about it? How do you know? And then I do want to ask about the Venusian visitors and the red berets, because let's say I'm a skeptic.
I hear you.
Let me frame this. You hold these conferences in Mount Shasta, and you've had Venusian visitors, and the two that I saw, at least in researching you, came in red berets with these beautiful little bee pens on them, symbolic to their community of origin. So as an outsider, it's like, how do you know these aren't two women who put on a costume and made bold claims? Because I want to help people break that cognitive dissonance and become open to considering the possibility.
Well, people are going to have to do their own research. I'm not here to provide, absolute proof to anyone. That everyone's going to have an argument or disagreement. Life has been announced on the front of the New York Times is on Venus and the clouds, and there's actually bees that are actually feeding on certain things up there as well. They're actually a ground-dwelling bee. Dr. Raymond Keller chronicles this. The reason we don't know is they're lying. They're lying about everything. This is a control group. This is the Nazi New World Order. I've spoken strongly, and since 2011, I realized that the New World Order Nazis are in America. And this information came through Otto Skorzeny on his deathbed. He talked about Hitler and the Bushes all being Nazis. So there's that whole history, and they got the information from these beautiful psychic women who were working with the positive light forces, and they put them under house arrest and kind of had already overtaken. They had gotten to a certain point with the spaceships, and they came in and took it over, and the girls kind of put the brakes on what they were sharing, but they figured out enough from what they had at that point to use the interdimensional. Or can you imagine? We've been driving in cars and wars and lying, and all of this we could just be at this level. That was the intention. Valiant Thor, look, we'll give you a magnet. All that little technology stuff is really not the point. It's about a mindset of harmony and non-aggression towards each other, to put aside your prejudices, your bigotries, your judgments of other people and other nations and cultures, and what you think they think based on what you thought you've learned through the television programming. It is a mountain of confusion for people to go through. And for me, I came at it through a spiritual mystic. I was seeking God and truth and knocking upon the door, and the revelations of the kingdom, or whatever in certain terms, is came to me naturally and organically. For me, it was about a fervent desire to know God and truth that led me into the pyramids and that whole scenario that I do. So the Venusians, the fact that they're coming out like that now gives me hope that there's more direct interaction, where they're testing how people are reacting to the information and stuff like that. And I think there's lots of other people having many other contacts.
Okay, so when I was working on my ship, it was the Max von Laue, and it was based on series, and they were Germans that had broke away. So their entire mandate, what they always trained us to do, was keep an eye out. It was about technology. They were trading for tech, and Venus was completely off limits to them. We couldn't go to Venus. They couldn't even get close to Venus. They were not welcome there because they were still very, a very undeveloped society. So even though they had great technology as compared to what like you said, we're driving cars, they had access to space program technology. They were just an unadvanced society, and they couldn't go there. Venus was completely off limits, and they would get immediately ejected from the airspace if they went there.
Yeah.
That was one thing. So we always looked up to Venus was like this, in the solar system, Venus was and is more of a like the mountain of the wizard kind of thing, where you're not welcome, like the old mystic on the mountain where you just can't go there because the magical things happen. That was kind of like the persona of Venus. While we were in the space program, there was a lot of activity in the Kuiper Belt around Jupiter, and Saturn was off limits as well. I do want to say that there are people, Jackie. So you were talking about bee. You said like they're bee hybrids. But basically, what we referred to as any being that had the ability to articulate, so a few 100,000 words, 100,000 words, and we just called it a person. So if it's a bee that's been grafted with people and it can talk, then it's just a bee person. We kind of classified them all as people. Anything at a certain level of intelligence is a person. And what we've been hidden, one of the great lies, like you said about the programming of Tilman, one of the great lies is that we're the top of the food chain, that our consciousness is, this is it. This is as smart as we could get. You get smart people like Einstein and Stephen Hawking, that's as smart as it goes. And that's not the case. And everybody in the space program knew that as well, that there are very, very more advanced, as far as we are above our animals and our insects, as far as we are cognitively above them, there are beings in the universe that are cognitively tongue twisting, above us in mentality. So, and then people and the Venusians, did I say that right?
Yeah.
I said Venusians, I didn't say
Not
Venetians, like
Venetians.
from Venice.
Right.
Because I'm only a certain level of cognitive ability. So, you know, I'm a person, I'm a 3D guy, and so are, you know, so are we all. And we've all met people that were seemingly less cognitive than us or seemingly more cognitive than us. There's a scale, and you're going to live so many times, and you incarnate in hopefully in a greater vessel that has a better mind. You know, like we're all part of a bigger mind. And there are beings that affect our reality. Like you said, the masters that engineer what's going on, and what it is, we're all on the cusp of really being something better than what we have been. And so these people that we're looking at as kind of dark, I don't like to group things into dark and light. There are people that are more self-centered and people that are more group-centered. And I think the self-centered people want us to stay unadvanced so that we're easier to control and they can get more for themselves. And the fact is that that's just not going to stand. It's just not going to, it just doesn't, that's not the way nature works. Mankind has to evolve. And we're, you know, Rob's info, I think, is kind of gives us something to aspire to. That's kind of like where we're going to go. We're going to be people that are far more, where spirituality comes a lot more easily. So,
All right. Well, that's true. The Venusians said they're preparing for our colonization on the front side of the moon, limited, and Mars as well. So they're preparing that whatever those bases are up there, they're going to be liberated, and man's going to already have a foothold at a certain point. How soon depends on us as we go through this end period. You know, let's give the prophets time to sleep and refuse to follow the Satanist agenda.
This leads me to a question, Tony. I actually called Tony yesterday to ask him about Starseeds, because I mean, I'm pretty open about visitations. I have with 5 entities. I've had them since 2014. And only in my last sort of regression did I ask, like, why do you keep visiting me? And they said, well, this is where you're from. You are us. And I'm trying to identify what race or species it is, you know, whatever is the correct version of that. And I keep getting to Cygnus, Cygnusian. And do you know anything about them, by the way?
Actually, I think Raymond Keller can talk about them. There's so many varieties. You have to have a reprehensible thumb. No,
Yeah, there really are.
No, I mean a prehensible thumb, and the consciousness is generally along 5, 2 arms, 2 legs, but there's variations of that. And with the Syrian shift and some of these genetic alterings that through this technology was found out, I don't think they do that anymore. From what I understand, and some things I read years ago, that they're allowed to genetically strengthen, but they're not supposed to accelerate or to, do cross-species stuff. Generally speaking, they want to let something start, but it seems like that's always going on. That's probably just my judgment. So,
but as it pertains to these Venusian women, my question would be, like, do you see them as, like, how could I explain this? Venusian spirits in human bodies, or have they actually traveled here from Venus? Are they starseeds? Like, how does that work from your perspective?
Yeah. Okay, here's the deal. There are starseeds, and those are extraterrestrials who've come here, and that's probably the situation with you. There's a lot of people. We're all from the stars originally. Yeah. And what happens is some are coming in on a short-term basis now. There are a lot of people focusing to come here now because there's a thing where the soul can develop a lot through a lot of this stress. It's kind of seeing it's going to happen, but there's going to be, it's kind of like you're a weightlifter. We're taking a lot of weight of negativity, and we're being forced to choose within our hearts and souls for ourselves. That's why they can't put it on a plate or do it for us. This is a thing that everyone's agreed to come into the 3rd dimension as your soul descends and creates. Or if your soul is, I won't go into that. So
Rob, that's one of the best ways I've ever heard that described. It's like a weightlifter. So I've had people ask me in the past, like, you know, when they hear my account of what I went through, and they go, how is that even allowed to be? So terrible. There's a duck. How is that allowed to be so someone could suffer so bad? And my answer was, you know, it's only 80 years. We're talking about a soul that lasts, you know, for an eternal.
It's eternal.
Eternal. So if I'm only going to live for
identity.
80, 100 years, it's a blink drop in the bucket. So it's like weightlifting. That's exactly right for your soul. Like, and I kind of feel a little sorry for people that seem to be playing the game of life on easy. You know, people that have it super easy, and like I just feel like they're not getting much out of it either. You know, like I feel like the more you overcome, the more stronger you become as a, you know, from the core of your person. So that was a great way to put that.
Oh, thanks.
I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal that, Rob.
Or go through stress. We learn through stress and challenges and how we come out of it. So I want to honor Jacqueline here. Let me bring up some pictures for you, Jacqueline. Would you like to see them?
Yes, as would I'm sure most people watching.
Okay. So I got to pull up Lady Columba here, and I'll just go into the Queen's images. Got to pull her up. So I'll just say there's different types of translation, Jacqueline. You have the full-blown ascension. We go through various dimensions, and that's a long discussion, but we're basically in the third. The planet is moving into the fourth dimension, which is time. So we're going to be understanding the nature of who we are, understanding our cities, our powers, and our relationship to the material world around us. So let me try again here.
Yeah, you should be set. Yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay.
So let's start off with Raymond Keller and this woman here. Her name was Dolores Barrios. He met her in 1972. She was born in 1585 and actually became a dual citizen of Earth and Venus at the age of 245, and was taken by the ascended master El Moria, who is known as the accidental apostle, Lord Dismas, who died with Christ on the cross. And he is the regent of Venus. And she came to visit Raymond in 2012, December 20th. This woman here, she said, Raymond, do you want to see an ascension party? And he said yes. And so she took him to Venus, and he lived there for 2.5 months. And when he came back, I got to get this up. Here it goes. Okay, there it is. Sorry. When he came back, he had a heart attack, pretty bad one. And he wrote 2 books, which are amazing. And when he was releasing this book here, when he was releasing this book here, you can see these 2 women in the back. Mm-hmm. And there's another gentleman there talking to them. And those girls, the one on the left is named Lady Columba, and the dark-haired one is known as Lady Aurora. So they choose their names after they go through what is called translation. The woman, the blonde woman on the left, her Earth name, she was born in 1902 and died in 1995, or translated as they call it, and became part of the Venusian angel force to the Earth. So when you think about Venus and the planet of love, and it has the longest relationship in history, you think about why we've spent billions and billions and billions of dollars of sending probes to Venus. They allowed 1 or 2 to land or something, and but there's life there, obviously. And you're right, Tony, anybody with negative intentions can't get there, and they monitor everything very closely. They have an entire moon called Neith, which is cloaked, and they're already, they can see protuberances. They of variances between the foreground and the background when looking at it. So NASA knows so much more, never a straight answer. This is basically a criminal organization that's keeping the drug manufacturing alive, the drug of power and greed and lust for possessions, and this petty control network that works from scarcity and lack and causes suffering on others and has no regard based on individual desires. And this is how this kind of dark forces work through aspects of our society. And to counter that, there has always been in place the divine plan, the masters of light and hierarchy have been watching this planet. We've been in quarantine. To get a quick history, in Atlantis and Lemuria, the planet was invaded by some negative forces who were abducting, and they took over. And some of these races were kind of misleading the humans into putting themselves between God. They created priesthoods. They created the Wizard of Oz scenario. And this is in violation of universal law. So the story on the girl on the left was she was born in India, and she worked for the East India Company as a tour guide. And she helped a beggar on the road, lost her job coming down to Rishikesh and Lakshmanjula from up in the Himalayas at the foothills of Badrinath and stuff like that. And the master said, I'm not a beggar, I'm a master. He took her to Venus, and she became a dual citizenship at some point in her life. Her name was Evelyn Smith. Her real name is Commander Aura Rains, and they go through various looks. She's 60 years older now, and who knows if they're, what's happening there. But as far as, but I looked at her. There's certain things that when I looked at her again, because I was kind of skeptical at the beginning because she looked quite a bit different, but upon examination of her, it was quickly apparent that it was her. So this is her. The first picture you saw was a giant rock. She was there being interviewed by Long John Nebel and another UFO guy in the early 50s out in the desert. And here she is in West Virginia at the library at Cheat Lake meeting me and being able to answer some questions. And people were kind of triggered by, oh, she's wearing makeup and, whatever the wig, she's wearing a little uniform, a sash. And this goes back to her actually early days, Jacqueline, because she told me in the interview that she had been serving the earth for 300 years in the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the Caribbean Revolution, and the South American Revolution. And certain elements of the Masons were overtaken. And there's a criminal element that's running its own program there on certain levels now. But originally, the founding fathers, like Benjamin Franklin, it was called the Venus Lodge. And guess what Benjamin and his gang organized? The Boston Tea Party. So this was a type of rebellion and civil disobedience against the incursion and the financial enslavement against the colonies, which were doing their own thing. And they came up with the idea of creating their own script or their own paper based on the mutual cooperation, which is based on the financial system of Venus, that if you don't get a small piece of the pie, you just bake more pies. So her Raspberry Beret. Jacqueline, can you think of a musician that might have met Venusian based on that picture?
You're asking the wrong person. I'm so out of the loop with any media, music, popular. I have no, I mean, the first person I think is Cyndi Lauper.
Okay.
Well, Rob, I feel like I just got assigned a bunch of homework because there's a bunch of books now that I'm looking. I pull up the name Annabella Kreb, and there's links to tons of stuff through the wiki and like I feel like I have a week's worth of homework to do now because I want to research this more. What you said, it's like you just gave me some places to look. So it's super interesting. And like I said, this is a different direction. That working with people, there's a lot of people that have different contact and different levels of technology that they get contact with for different reasons. A lot of people have really bad things happen, and a lot of people have really good things. And this is one of those things. This is one of those areas of the subject where it's like I want to look into this because obviously this is kind of more of what the good guys. You know, these are the people that are really, you know, that are really working for all of us. And it's just something that I really looking forward to reading up on and looking into, you know.
They're not going to go through the present, what they call the mind F you blank of being an extraterrestrial. It's not relevant. Jacqueline, I'm going to keep my answers real short. I want you to ask me some questions.
Okay.
Sure.
I get it. Just ask me. I'll answer a question real quick.
Who was the musician you were referring to?
She wore a raspberry beret. And if it was warm, she wouldn't wear much more. She wore a raspberry beret.
Interesting.
She came in through the outer. That was Prince. So his guitar actually comes from a Venusian symbol. He changed his name to a symbol that's known on Venus. Anyway, go ahead.
I just want to touch on that there are consistencies throughout all of time. If you look in the right places, you kind of start to pick up on the symbols. So let me move past, you know, asking questions from a sort of skeptic position and just assume, you know, now let's move into, okay, this is true. What are you aware of that they're doing now to help us?
Their help is pretty powerful. First of all, there's a big radio station on the backside of the moon that the commander's in charge of. That's to help them relay, to send out signals, because they have relay signals. The moon base is a defensive position, primarily an observation post, to keep the mad scientists from letting the experiment get out of the room too much. They're allowing free will. Obviously, these Nazis are out in outer space creating slaves. It's reprehensible, but they pretty much let beings do their own free will. The beings that were encased here and imprisoned here from a long time ago, there are moving portals. And so there have been enforcements to try to keep them here. So we are kind of in a prison planet, and some of the prisoners that are influencing, and people are choosing it. Unfortunately, it's just part of the growth of the soul. We're choosing restrictions and endless laws and judgments on others that create suffering for ourselves. And so it's real simple. If we just raise our eyes upward and inward, I'm realizing that their actions are obviously taking place, Jacqueline, in military, in music, in technology. They're ever here to raise individual spiritual awareness. That's primarily number one. Mm. They're talking to housewives and that are spiritually developed, whether they know anything about metaphysics or the high self, it doesn't matter. It's about who you are as a person and the love quotient that you carry. That's the mission, is to, one individual at a time, change this world and fan the Christ flame, or the universal truth of the isness of what we are, into all of them. That's the number one. But primarily nuclear power. They're watching multiple programs. They're influencing behind the scenes. They can come over in the ships invisible. They can beam down physically next to you, be invisible. You can't hear them standing next to you, telepathically guiding some individuals, working as an angel force in that capacity. If it's deemed important for the individual's growth or for furtherance of something, a contact can be made openly and consciously, and how the person responds to that. I was kind of like always like thinking my contact would have to be something different, like a spaceship, and I get to understand more truth. But it was my a different experience for me. It was like a wake-up call. It's kind of like Carlos Castaneda, Journey to Ixtlan, where he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. My first thoughts about Don Juan as a teacher are different." And she basically said, "Look, you can have all the knowledge in the world. You can do all the charity in the world. You can have the best intentions in the world. You can be selfless, but if you don't have love, you're nothing." That was the poem of the Supremacy of Love by the Apostle Paul. And that really got me realizing that my desire to share, I just like to share what I'm learning new, and it just sometimes is overwhelming, and it's not really a basic step for people, but it's not really about that stuff. It's about understanding the family. Annabelle Krebs, when she sat in on a council meeting of the Confederation within the system, she saw Ganesha being, there was a tall beings, they had different helmets on, there was a bee being, there was like a blue avian was in there. There were many other different types of beings in this Federation meeting. And she said that she could look beyond the bodies and saw the intelligence and the love of creation within their eyes. She saw a very unique individual. She says it was quite an experience to see all of these different beings at once. They had prepared her for it, but she said it was amazing how she was just found the love for, could see the energy in the other people. So the humanness and the technology is fun and interesting, and but we need to be aware that we have to be responsible, and that's how they're helping us, one person at a time, and secretly behind the scenes. They need no pat on the back. They don't. They have platforms on the earth, on the oceans, around the earth, and in the solar system, and they're working within a dynamic of 51 systems and 601 planets, and that is just the Confederation that we belong to. And the Queen of Venus, because they have a high, kind of a communal mind in a sense. They telepathically, they don't have to vote, they just hold hands and they know what the answer is. And the one that's just been elected to be their queen is Lady Orda. Their political structure is the Ascended Master Regent El Moria is the overseer there, to the liaison to the higher dimensions, and only acts as an advisory capacity, which is almost always followed. And she is actually the head of this particular federation of 601 planets. There are other federations, many. There's one called the Alliance. They're very powerful, very intelligent, huge worlds of commerce and trade. And they work, all of these federations generally work together, but they have various viewpoints on certain subjects and variances. And even within them, it's like Star Wars, they do have various differences. So it's a complex interconnection with the rules firmly in place of non-interference. Some are feeling like they should interfere, we should really do something more now. And they're like, every time it's happened, it's gotten worse. So I guess the wisdom is to let this come to its eventual conclusion. And
I think that's what we're seeing now. Like it feels like just this last couple years that things are coming to a head, with well, at least in the United States, with everything that we've had going on. I think that they left it up to us. I think that at some point we were cut off from a lot of ET influence, and now it's kind of up to us. And you're seeing people that are desperate on one end or the other, spill over into, because the programming on television, the issues of what's going on are really kind of boiled over. It's way more intense than it ever was. The divide is far more intense than it ever was. So you can tell something's coming to a head.
Yeah, Jacqueline, you have another question? Did that help you a little bit understand the various levels of help?
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say it's about the love potion that you carry?
The love quotient.
Quotient. Okay. I both
I got some love
standardized.
potion here.
No, I was thinking about something I read on your site, just a little line that stood out to me, which is you said something along the lines of it's not just to know the truth, but to feel it and embody it in your life. It made me think about, what you're saying. It's interesting to learn about these things. Really, to me, it's fascinating. But at the end of the day, it's like, what truth are you pulling into your embodiment on earth? Is that what you meant by that?
Absolutely. That a lot of people are focused on the mental and the political aspect of what's taking place, but it's really the more political you get into the hierarchies, and we think, oh, there's no higher. Well, there absolutely is vibrational dimensions. That the higher dimensions can come down, the lower dimensions don't generally go up freely. There's kind of these natural demarcations, and higher does not necessarily mean more advanced. Higher beings will incarnate back into the physical plane and may be going back. So a person, a starseed who from yourself may have come from a sixth dimension and taken on a round of incarnations on this earth, usually 144 lives, 12 lives in each astrological sign to balance out and get your rounded experience as a human. And it's variable on all worlds. They have like lakes, they have geese, they have technologies, they fly like Superman. I mean, and the world in the astral plane, though we can't see it, it's the light comes from within. The light isn't coming from the sun. Everything is just self-illuminated in that dimension. So
I'm actually really happy you said that from my specific viewers, because we've talked about that before. It's confused. The notion of being a star seed is often confusing to people when they're like, but I can recall past lives. And so I said, no, you can have many, many lives as a human and still be a star seed. And I love that you said that, because I didn't know that. So that's super helpful information about the moving around the astrological wheel in a way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another important point is like ascension is like a buzzword nowadays. It's starting to really kind of proliferate and take on. People are interpreting it in different ways. And I've been asked people, everybody's like in a hurry to ascend. And I've talked with people that seem like, like they're in a rush, let's hurry up and ascend and get it over with. And nobody takes into account the fact that you can go into another level of consciousness and not be ready for it and be thrown right back. Like if you want your ascension to stick, you've got to master where you're at now. If you want to go on to the next level, where you're going to die and incarnate as something much better, you need to master where you're at. So people are trying to take shortcuts, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think that you need to learn your position, learn what you are now, and in every lesson you can, so that when you do ascend, you'll be ready for it, because you can go backwards too.
I want to, Jacqueline, I want to show you something here, Tony, about that point, and go into the ascension. You can ask any question. Here's this is the picture of Raymond and the Queen of Venus. You remember him as a little boy? Look how old he is here.
Yeah.
She's holding in her hand what's called a nimbus. This is a psychically activated.
What does it look like?
It can look like many things. Hers looks like a marble. And it's actually, you can see she's holding it in the other pictures that I had showed earlier. You can see there's one where she's holding it. But anything else, Jacqueline? I really want to honor you.
Yes. I want to hear about the pyramid.
Okay. You want to hear about the pyramid?
Yeah.
Yes.
So look, I don't have one, but I want to say this before you go into this, that like when we went to Australia and we did the RIE conference, Rob, you handed these out for the whole audience. You said, go ahead and try it out. And I was like, okay, whatever. Somebody handed it to me. And when I put it on, I felt something. You can feel different. Like it's like calming, like you can actually think differently. I don't know how to explain it, but there is like a marked effect. As soon as you put the thing on, you can feel it. So I don't have one to join you guys, but there you go. Yeah, the other thing is, I thought, boy, this is not going to catch on as a fashion yet. mankind isn't really ready to take to rock these in the restaurant, but there is a real thing. There is a real result, like a science behind it. So go
Yeah.
ahead, Rob, to explain how that works.
Okay, I'm going to just show you a thing on my website here. I think that's probably the best way to do it. But pyramid energy, and I'll just scroll through the pictures real quick and give you a real quick little tutorial here. But pyramid energy is basic if you understand the nature of the universe and the science. And I'm on Sci-Spy TV, by the way. I have my website, The Promise Revealed, Robert Potter public page, and all of that is my social media. On Instagram is The Promise Revealed. And I am trying to actually get some more content out now. My website's still a mess. If you get on here, do it. So what is a pyramid? There's a lot of magnetic concentration that exists in the pyramid. And when you wear it on your head, when a pyramid is aligned to magnetic north, it sings and vibrates. So it's like a crystal in that sense. And so just like a prism refracts Earth's magnetism or light into 7 colors of the rainbow, so the pyramid refracts the Earth's magnetism. There are 4 building blocks, which are left over from Atlantis when we lost the technology. Was kind of like the caveman or the Native Americans. Oh, the north, the wind, the south, the 4, it's carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen is what that represents. And carbon is the base solid of the physical plane. It's a platonic solid. It's based on a tetrahedron. And so the pyramid shape is the shape at 52 degrees of the Great Pyramid is the one that supports life. It creates what's called the pyramid effect. Okay? So the pyramid effect is a negative ion. This is the ultimate physical atom. And this is our body is actually like this. Here's our body in here. And we have our head up here. This is the north and south pole of the vortexes of the consciousness from the divine universe and from the earth coming in. And they meet and create this vortex of the I am light body, or the auric egg. And there's a whole science around this, which government is worked with and manipulated. And a lot of this stuff is involved in what Tony, the technology was used on him, wresting from nature these secret technologies and abusing it. So diamonds are pyramid shaped. That's a raw diamond, baby. Why do people value diamonds? There's the answer. It's a perfect octahedron, the pyramid. In the bloodstream, you have a heme chain, and it looks kind of like this. It's a hemoglobin. And there's an exchange in our air of the negative ions that we breathe. Now, negative ions are caused by water meeting air and thunderstorms. And I guess we're loading slow on the images, or I lost them, but pyramid means pyramid, fire in the middle. So plants create negative ions. Why do we feel good in the forest? Because of negative ions. Why is the seashore? Now, our body, if we have a lot of positive ions, we become imbalanced in the serotonin in the hormones of our bloodstream. So when the full moon comes out, we go a little crazy. So how does a pyramid work? Well, because the images aren't coming up, I'm kind of a little disgruntled here. But so the pyramid shape in Egypt was built for a different purpose. It was an energy center. So utilizing the various sciences of the pyramid where it's placed, there's a giant technology in here to stabilize the earth in its orbit, which still wobble. It's doing the best it can. But the pyramid is known throughout the universe as a life-giving force. On various planets, it's a different number of sides and different angles, depending on the type of life form, the dimension, and the magnetic properties of the planet. So different things work good. Gold's molecular structure is pyramid shape. Now there's 2 principles, metaphysically speaking. One is a pyramid principle of matter made flesh. It's a material object, yet it has an aura like a living things, like human, plants, and animals. The Christ principle is the principle whereby mind conditioned by matter, in flesh, through time and space, returns to spirit. That's called the Christ principle. And this is the pyramid principle. So you look down here, you can see it. It's a trans-dimensional portal. This is actually connected to a Tesla coil. And I forget the guy that created this, but you see the masculine feminine vortex coming off and the double helix coming off of the pyramid with a gold capstone, or it should be a gold capstone. That's how my pyramids work. And on other worlds, there's different societies. So the pyramid acts as a thing and affects our endocrine glands. So I have different technologies and different shapes that were given by the Pleiadians, and we utilize crystals because each crystal has a vibration. You have 7 notes to musical scale, but you have 12 half notes. So 13 is the actual octave. So there's different frequencies that are running through our body in the spectrum of life that we live in. So harmonizing our frequencies to the reality around us is important. So this device here is a little device. I have one above my desk here. And so we work with the sound, light, and color of the frequencies of the pyramid. So that's basically how a pyramid works. But by wearing it on my head, if you can imagine all the negative ions that are going into my lungs, this is a perfect thing for COVID or for the fire. If you're having oxygen absorption problems, that means the 5G is on. You must get to nature quickly, get in pyramids and stay out of the city. Do not stay. That's if they turn up 5G, if they have that type of power that they achieved in China, that could be a very negative thing. That's just a heads up on a science level. But the pyramid helps balance. So what's happening here is we have some different aspects of our esoteric anatomy. Everyone knows our endocrine glands, the sexual gland, the adrenals, the pancreas, the thymus, the thyroid, the pituitary, the pineal. These glands secrete hormones into our bloodstream. That's where our feelings come from. And part of this technology, Jacqueline, which goes back to what you said, was that we must unify our thoughts and feelings. And our thoughts and feelings are out of sync because we're so focused in the outer or lower 3D personality vehicle and not into the more spiritual aspects, which is part of the technology of the pyramids, the crystals, the lasers, to tune people in, to let their bodies, let the light in, and the frequency of meditation that just causes a good feeling, right? So that's what pyramids are about.
So in one of my, call it what you want, I'm going to call it a visitations from the 5, I was in a really bad place and I asked them to help, and I saw them circle around me and spiral 2 strands of gold light, just like the DNA helix passing through the 5 of us. I was 1, so there were 4 others. It had a very huge impact on me and my 3-dimensional body. But then I asked, like, how can I replicate that? Because being human is so weird sometimes. And I saw the pyramid, and I saw that it kind of like causes this vibratory activation in our actual DNA, just like the double strand that you showed going out of the top. And isn't it also about the appearance of photons under that? They just appear in pyramid structures, which is like this just appearance of energy at a very small level. Isn't there something like that happening? That's where the fire amid came from, the name of the pyramid. It's like they just show up.
In the Bible, Isaiah 19:19, in the midst of the land of Egypt, in the heart and the border thereof, there lies an altar to the Lord. And that's the Great Pyramid. And the pyramid is a living word of God. It's the spirit, the life force within a material object. Normally there has to be life, and that is what kind of anchors life into the physical form through the DNA and the frequencies and all that stuff. But essentially, this activation that you asked for and were blessed with is real. And this is what is taking place now. This is actually a time of communion. For those who are in fear, watching their television sets, fighting, going into all this stuff, the world's going to be a difficult place. For those people who are tuning and remembering and connecting to their soul. Now is a high time with the vibration changing. The Lion's Gate, these various activations. I've been with Louis Martens, and the spaceships show up. They offer various initiations of light energy, and it's all peaceful. It's not about mind control. No one I've seen in any of these groups is doing anything but hugging each other and learning and growing and becoming more powerful in their personal lives. It's not a cult. It's not a thing to get attached to. Don't get attached to the person who brings in the UFOs like James Gilliland or whatever. These are places where when we gather, they're ready to help us with knowledge and spiritual attunement, not with technology, but to make us better people so that together we can transform our world in harmony. And a lot of it has to do with simply getting the stress of the city off of ourselves. So this is a good thing.
My last question for now is,
Okay.
What is the quantum resonator? For some reason, I was so curious about this.
The quantum flux resonator, that's a device created by Cobra. I don't really sell them anymore. I have one that's broken, but it's based on a universal design and principle. It does create it creates your auric field like these jewelry devices that I sell that Fred Bell made.
Are those rubies?
These are rubies, but we have it's called an Andromedan holographic projector, and I have one called the Promise nuclear receptor that Fred Bell received from the Pleiadians. This was one of the first technologies utilizing crystals and crystal wraps, and it really has changed since 1978 when we came out with the first one. The technology to build them is much more efficient now. But these have the focal length of the DNA, so it strengthens the DNA. I did want to bring up one really cool thing I think people might be interested in, as I wanted to talk about the inner earth and what this guy who was in Shasta, what happened to him.
Do it. Mic is yours.
Okay. All right. This guy named Lowell Thomas was on the mountain. I heard about him about 3 months ago or so. He went inside the mountain. They just picked him. It was kind of orchestrated and designed by the masters. Louis calls them the masters, those that live in the inner earth and the Agartha network. And this is, they've divided the earth into 12 regions, and they go into various dimensions from the surface all the way down into the center, which is kind of like a black hole. It's an interdimensional thing. We can't really, it's difficult to understand it, but you can read these they're called the Transylvania Sunrise series with Radu Sinamar, translated by Peter Moon. And it's about the secret tunnels that lead to, the 3 tunnels that lead to the secret places of the lion. Another reference, but so the inner earth group beneath here, Telos, is a Lemurian outpost from a long time ago. And we've heard stories of this with Saint Germain, and of course I've spoken about the ascension of beings here. And so this is kind of one of the more publicized, what are called inner retreats of the Great White Brother Sisterhood. This is not a racial thing. It's about they wear white and the purity of the consciousness. And the rainbow actually handles all colors of the rainbow. And so it's not a racial thing at all, but the Great White Brother Sisterhood is comprised of various pockets and various sizes of underground complexes from ancient times up to present, of various groups and civilizations that have gone under earth as recently as 1,000 years ago. In Romania, the Dacians were being attacked by the Romans in Romania, and they went underground, and they have a city called Telos. And you can learn about that in these series of books with Radu Sinamar. Egypt, the first tunnel inside the earth, Forgotten Genesis, The Secret Parchment, Transylvania Moonrise. Tremendous series. I highly recommend it for people who want to learn about the reality of the inner earth. My friend Louis Martens, who's been in contact with the masters and have been to several of these inner retreats, it's an interdimensional experience kind of it, and that's kind of what they're preparing us for, is certain of these individuals are going into these inner retreats. So this guy basically out of nowhere, not super, it's not an inner earth researcher, just a really well-balanced spiritual guy. His name is Lowell Thomas. I love him. And maybe you could have him on the show. I'll introduce you to him. He was meditating and felt a cool blast of air and ended up walking, looking and seeing a figure in the tunnel that opened up, appeared. And he said, would you like to come inside the mountain into Telos? And he goes, okay. And he walked in. He couldn't really see him too well. They got to the bottom and of this tunnel. He looked back and he said there was no light there. So whatever was there was not an interdimensional kind of thing that they took him through, but it was physical. And he got on board this sled, and it had no control device. It was operated by a guy named Alex, a tall white being. He took him into Telos, took him up to the level, showed him a level, his story. I'll let you do his story, but basically, I quizzed him. It'll be on my website, The Promise Revealed, at some point soon as a new blog post. But he took him into a meeting room, and he met the one called the Dama, who's kind of been a myth. But he said the Dama was there, and he had met, she met the leader, I think his name was An, and another one, An Ra, and then there was two women. So there was, I think it was two men and 4 women, if I remember. But one of the women did the talking, and she said, the reason you're here is we think there may be a solar event. They called it an event. It's very interesting because there's a new moon, a blue moon, a full moon. I mean, I don't know. It's a lot
Halloween,
of influences of planets on December 20th this year. And I don't normally listen to prognostications, but I asked him further, and he said that they said they don't know. They said no angel or man knows. We don't know, but we think it might be a solar sneeze. And to get the understanding of the solar sneeze, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what's called the Schumann resonance. You know what that is, Jacqueline?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, that's a vibration of the earth. It's kind of like its own butterfly, where that magnetic field of the earth, that frequency is shifting. And there is global warming throughout the entire galaxy. It has to do with us going through the warming. And yes, our technology is bad, but the global warming thing is the social engineering thing, construct that's leading to no good. But the poles are shifting. It's not off the top, where the North Pole magnetically is now around Greenland. So that's why the poles are melting to a large extent. Although mankind's pollution, of course, is very bad. That's a side note here. So the Schumann resonance is what keeps our consciousness focused in this reality, in this time and space. When the astronauts first going into outer space, Fred Bell, my mentor, who developed these pyramids as a scientific contact with the Pleiadians, used to work on NASA. He worked in the flight module that took off. He said the astronauts were having out-of-body experiences. He said Edgar Mitchell, told him that he was pacing the ship outside the nose cone while they were traveling around. You could see himself. So some of these guys were having emotional and mental problems. That's why they were quarantined. Since then, they developed their own artificial Schumann resonance inside the space station and the craft, so the guys don't have such radical emotional, mental, and these astral projection experiences so readily without that gravity influence. So a couple of days after my conference, actually, and another week later, which ended the 29th, so August, I think, like 4th, and then through the 7th or something like that, there was a huge human residence spike. We used to be at 7 to 8. Now we're generally hovering at 11 to 12. It was spiking to 58 and to 71. Boom, boom. So this was causing a great deal of psychological, mental, emotional release.
This year? Are you talking about this year?
This
Like
year.
not that long ago. Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that follow it. There's a website that tells you the daily human residence, and they always send me these updates like, look, it's spiked, you know, and these are always on days where it feels like you know, things are kind of out of control, you know, like in your daily life. And I went, well, that makes sense because everything else that day went crazy. You know, like every now and then I've had, you know, really eventful days that just, you know, you have a long run of bad or good luck kind of thing, and they seem to match when I'm seeing updates of the spikes in human residence. So
They, you know, they've been noted in group meditations to take place around that time. So I'm not saying it is a good or bad thing. It's just a thing that's going to transform consciousness. And it's actually recalibrating the ley lines of the planet, according to my friend from South America. But one of the things that go into the pyramids is he said that the first thing he saw in the temple city beneath Mount Shasta was this big pyramid, that the center of the Telosian thing. It's a 25-mile extending all around in the underground here of Mount Shasta. It exists about a mile below the peak. Is the probably the cavern of the first level. It goes down 5 levels. You know, living and the temple society, and then the manufacturing, and then a living, or then you know, there's a couple of living levels, and then there's a park level, and then there's a hydroponic level, and industry level. So that they said that they were anticipating a shift. But one of the things they said about the pyramids, they said, and this is how I knew the guy was true, because he said, oh, that's a gift from the Venusians. It's a pyramid they call the living stone. And what this does, Jacqueline, is as the frequencies, it's an astrological clock to the frequencies of the vibrations that are coming in from the cosmos, from various planets. This is the science of astrology. The science affecting our hormones and endocrines. The magnetic fields of the planets as they move causes our feelings retrograde back and forth in our endocrine glands to fluctuate. If we can find our master consciousness, we don't react to astrology, we move forward, and we're not a reaction of the 12 astrological signs. We're moving in truth. The stars impel, they don't compel. So with all of these influences going on the magnetic field of the living stone, it's creating different colors. And for the inner earth people and for other races, and I've heard this on other worlds, according to Wendell Stevens, who I knew since I was a kid, that they have these, they go about various activities. When it's in a blue thing, it's time for prayer or this. If it's in a green thing, they're into health and body, or they kind of try to harmonize. I'm sure it doesn't happen. Everyone doesn't just drop and go exercise, but I think there's a tendency to be more in harmony, and that kind of is a vibrational clock that can keep them in harmony with the galaxy, kind of. So what they told him was that there may be this solar sneeze, and I found it kind of interesting. So if you have any questions or thoughts on that, I want to share that with your audience. I'm not saying there is going to be, but of all the possibilities that I've heard for dates and stuff, I'm actually saying this one. They told it to me about 2 weeks ago. I've been deciding whether I should. I'm not going to say anything's going to happen, but it's very possible there can be a spike in there's going to be some gyrations and changing of things. It could bring, a storm of negativity too, but it's going to be shifting. If that happens, it could cause something big. Any thoughts on that, guys?
So no doubt in the near future, in the next few months, there's going to be a lot of events, and a lot of people are calling out, like even this month, that there are going to be some social problems. There are people that are saying, we need to, you got to restock up on your toilet paper kind of stuff by the end of the month. There are some events that are going to happen. So Rob, what I want to do is after the first of the year, after we get past all that, we'll have you back on and we can reflect on that stuff,
Sure.
because I do want to, because everybody's, not everybody, but there's a lot of things that are being talked about now that, we're going to need to talk about in the future and kind of just digest what happens, later on. So it's like one of those things like gut hunch where you're seeing it and you have a, just that strong feeling, like you can see the writing on the wall that in the next, 4 to 6 months, there's going to be a lot of change, and it would be nice if it was the solar sneeze, because it's been called out so much, and they say that there's an AI system, there's an AI signal that a solar sneeze is going to clear that out, and it's going to open the door to a better disclosure for everybody, because we're going to get a disclosure. And I think there's a real calendar on that, on disclosure. But if the sneeze happens, I think it would just, it's that one step further into the whole sequence. So I think it'd be a good thing. But I also think that, there could be a huge loss of life too, as well. What I mean? Everything's going to shut off at once if that's the case. So we'll see. We'll just, we'll make a note of it and we'll come back to it later after the fact and see what's going on.
Yeah, and EMP could be a good thing on one level, but I think it would cause a lot of chaos too. But I think there's so much that we don't know. I don't really trust flesh and blood. I put my faith in the inner truth, and I basically lately have become very humbled at the magnanimous decisions that we're all making now, that are making influences for millions of years of what we're going to do right now. These are important decisions that we make. So I'm starting to freak out about the people wearing masks. They used to be freaked out about me, but now I'm freaking out. So many people are still wearing masks, to be honest.
It's not funny anymore. Yeah, that's true. The mask wearing thing, like I understand and feel that people should wear masks, but I feel like it shouldn't be forced upon us. Like I really hate the fact that I can't go anywhere without one. Like I don't want to wear a mask when I go in the store, and I don't speak around other people to endanger them by, spreading it. So I think the joke is not funny anymore. I think it's time to change.
Yeah, I think we'll see something happening there. Jacqueline, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on.
I just want to know that I just want to say that I feel really left out not having a pyramid on my head. But
we'll get you one.
Yeah, we'll work on it. So, Rob, thanks. Well, I guess we can wrap it up. And thanks for coming out. Is there anything you got in the works that's coming up? I know you do some trips here and there. Are you going to South America this year?
Well, my website will have that thing going up. I'd like to go to South America this year. I'm going to hold off to see what's going to till the New Year's and see. If I do something, it'll probably be in the usual time over there around November, going into their springtime, kind of over down in Bolivia and Peru. It's beautiful down there. I think, in parting, I'd like to say thank you, and I'll introduce you guys to Lowell, the guy, and you can just talk to him and ask him questions. He's very down to earth. And again, it's like a nail in a coffin of a real individual just sharing their experience. A lot of my stuff is so science fiction and so out there that I think people need to research more. I'm going to be putting different aspects of my book and stuff online if you look inside there. Oh, I would like to say, if everyone can sign up, I have I tried to do a free inner circle, but I have to charge it only $1. But I'm going to put the information to the book, and everything's going to be coming out here within a month. So I'm trying to share as much information as I can with people like you, and I hope to work with you guys again.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, get us a link for that, and we'll make sure that gets known on this video.
Okay.
I just want to say that last week when I said we're going to have Rob Potter on, and I told people that if they weren't really familiar with ufology and what's going on, that they were going in the deep end of the pool, and it's absolutely the case. It's very advanced, very hard to get your head around a lot of the information, so I hope people can digest it. And like I said, I feel like I got a lot of homework, because when you say research it, I say that to people quite a bit too. Like, just don't believe me. Go and research it here. Go and look. And so we have our homework cut out for us now with this. So we will definitely have you back on, Rob, and go up and follow up with, I'll be better prepared with things I learned from this to talk about it further. So
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
thank
Rob.
you, sir. Thanks for having. And then, so for everybody watching, don't forget to tune in next time. We're going to have David Buchera. I guess I said the name right. I'm pretty sure, David. I know he watches. And he's next week's guest. He's the owner of the largest Bigfoot museum in the world, I believe. Hope I claimed that right. And Dave's full of, he's heard a lot of testimonials from people that come and visit his museum with stories that are just amazing, that line up because he hears it from different people that have nothing to do with each other. So that's going to be pretty enlightening stuff to talk about. Probably not as advanced as Venetians and all the
Venusians.
There I went. There I did it. I backslid. Totally backslid on that. So Venetians are in Venice. Venusians are in Venus. And Venus has been a wonderful friend every morning. So when I get up in the morning, I take my dogs out. I get a good glimpse at the night sky. We've had beautiful astronomy lately. And Venus is off right there in the east. It's a beautiful thing to look at every morning.
It's one of its closest times right now to Earth.
Venus and Mars are looking great. We've got Saturn and Jupiter in the evenings, and the moon has been full, pretty sort of full. But the astronomy lately in the last few weeks has been really good.
Well,
so, Rob, thanks
so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Certainly very welcome. Keep up the good work, my man, and I'll be in touch with you very soon.
Okay, bye.
See you guys.